The Chicago Bears general manager and head coach positions are still open and in process. So it's time for a little update. What is going on, y'all? Faiz Sports Talk back at it with another video talking, of course, I'm NFL here to talk about the Chicago Bears. So if you're a Bears fan, hit that big red subscribe button. Follow me on all my social media platforms and hit the bell icon so you're notified every time I drop a new video. All right, folks, it's time for an update. All right, we're well over a few days, weeks into this process, and the Bears still have not hired anybody for either the head coach or GM position. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Remember, we rushed into hiring Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, and we saw how that ended up happening. I would rather take our time and get it right than rush into something. But we just had the first domino fall in the New York Giants hiring their new GM, Joe Shine. If I'm botching his name, I apologize, but Joe Sheehan, the Bills' assistant GM, the Giants hired him. So he's off the market, and I'm not saying he was a hot candidate for the Bears or anything like that, but what I'm saying is, like, the Bears are still interviewing candidates. Other teams are interviewing finalists. Like, it's two different timelines here, and we know there's other teams, Vikings, etc., that need a head coach, that need a GM. So let me give you a quick update on all of the GMs that have interviewed, all the coaches that have interviewed, and who is still left. And I believe this is the last in terms of, I don't think there's going to be more people that the Bears interview, just because from a timing perspective, I think they have to really make this decision, fairly soon. I'm not saying rush into it, but it should be coming. All right, let's start with GM, folks. And as far as who they've interviewed, Glenn Cook, Kwasi Adolfo-Mensah, Jeff Ireland, Ed Dodds. He has withdrawn himself from the consideration, so he is not going to be part of the process any longer. Ran Carthen, Joe Sheehan, again, he is out as well. He took the Giants job. Elliott Wolf, Champ Kelly, Reggie McKenzie, and Monty Ossenford. We have interviewed all of those guys. Who is still left to be interviewed? Some very big names, actually. Rick Smith, who is my pick to be the GM, by the way. I want Rick Smith, former GM of the Houston Texans. Omar Khan, another one of my favorites. Morocco Brown, like him a lot. JoJo Wooden, Ryan Poles, and Joe Hortz. All right, those are guys that are still left to be interviewed. Let's talk about the guys. And by the way, shout out to my buddy Eric Lambert, who does a great job for the Bears. He put together the list that I'm sharing with you guys. Let's talk about the guys that have interviewed for the head coaching position and who is still left to be interviewed. As far as who is interviewed already, Jim Caldwell, former Lions and Colts head coach. Brian Daboll, my pick to be the Bears' next head coach, who I would pick the Bills' offensive coordinator. Matt Eberflus, who has already gotten a second interview that is scheduled, that is expected to happen. Colts defensive coordinator. Brian Flores, he's being linked to the Giants job a lot. Nathaniel Hackett, Packers offensive coordinator. Brian Leftwich, Bucks offensive coordinator. Doug Peterson, former Eagles head coach. Who is still left to be interviewed? Dennis Allen, Saints defensive coordinator. Todd Bowles, Bucks defensive coordinator. Leslie Frazier, Bills defensive coordinator. And Dan Quinn, Cowboys defensive coordinator. So there you have it, full list of where we're at in terms of the GM and in terms of the head coach. So now that we've got some dominoes falling here with the Giants making some moves, with some guys withdrawing their names, the picture's getting a little bit more clear. I've given you guys my prediction or my pick. Rick Smith for GM, and it is Brian Daboll for head coach. Now, Brian Daboll and Brian Flores are two of the top contenders for the Giants head coaching position because, again, they have hired the Bills' assistant GM, and he has ties, obviously, to Brian Daboll being from the same organization. And we know Brian Flores is from that area, so he could potentially be interested in going back there. So that puts a little bit of a wrench into things here, because if the Bears want either of those guys, I expect one of those two to be the Giants' new head coach. I hope it's Brian Flores, because I want Brian Daboll, but we will see. As far as what I'm hearing, reading, in terms of who's the favorite, who's not, there's a lot of speculation matter. Eberflus obviously getting the second interview says that he is definitely part of the final process. And as far as how I feel about Matt Eberflus, look, I don't hate him. I don't love him. He's solid. I'll leave it at that. Colts defensive coordinator, very respected around the league. He's been in the NFL for a while. And again, He is a guy who a lot of teams, a lot of guys respect. He's paid his dues. But to me, I would go for Brian Daboll. I really would over Matt Eberflus. I just don't want a defensive guy when we've got a quarterback in Justin Fields, and we want to do everything in our power to make sure that we get the most out of him. So as far as head coaches, I'll go there first. I've mentioned about Brian Daboll. He could be a finalist for the New York Giants job. Matt Eberflus got in his second interview with the Bears. Jim Caldwell. I heard some things about him picking up. Again, these are the Colts ties because we're working with Bill Polian. I would not be very happy with Jim Caldwell, honestly, folks. Brian Flores would be okay with that. Nathaniel Hackett, I mentioned I'm not happy with that one. Brian Leftwich, I wouldn't mind that at all. I really do like Byron Leftwich, so I'm okay there. Doug Peterson, that would be like the Matt Nagy situation all over again. And then, yeah, I'm not against defensive coordinators. I'm just not a big fan of them. That's why I would feel how I feel about Matt Eberflus. As far as the GMs, folks, and as far as we've got Jeff Ireland, I wouldn't mind. I like Ed Dodds, but he's out of the running. Rick Smith's my guy, and Omar Khan. So Rick Smith, Omar Khan, and Jeff Ireland. Kwasi Adolfo-Mensah, I've heard good things about him as well. Morocco Brown as well. So Morocco Brown, Kwasi Adolfo-Mensah, Rick Smith, Omar Khan is really where I would lean towards. I know a couple of the Bears players have made their opinions known that they want Champ Kelly. Tariq Cohen mentioned that. I believe a couple other Bears players did. But I don't think that's going to be taken into consideration. Just an interesting thought there. So get ready. I think it's going to happen soon for the most part. It's going to be one of these guys, obviously. And I think the interviews are just about to be wrapped up in the next couple of days. And we should have somebody as the next head coach and GM for the Bears. I would venture to say probably within the next 2 weeks. So let me know what you guys think. You know my pick. Rick Smith, Brian Daboll. Who's yours? Leave a comment down below. As always, thanks for watching.